because as opposed to just trying to get 10,000 new, followers, I'm actually trying to get a smaller number of actual qualified, focused customers who want to collaborate with me, right? And that's a
Yeah.
very, very different model of presenting yourself. So that really led me down the road of looking at more long form appreciating content, which led me into things like SEO, into copywriting. So my kind of principle is that anything that I put online, I want it to still be supporting my business 3 years from now, 5 years from now,
Yeah.
right? Whereas if you
Kind
put
of evergreen, right?
yeah, well, evergreen, but then also appreciating. So my programs are
Mm.
evergreen, but appreciating that the content grows in value. If you put something on one of the short form platforms like Instagram, for example, or TikTok,
Mm.
within about an hour, the value is almost entirely gone,
Yeah.
right? And if
Yeah.
there was value there, the value will show in that you've kept people on the platform and your follower count goes up,
Mm.
right? So that's where that whole idea of like the vanity metrics versus building a business,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so excited to have you with
I'm
me,
so
Carmen.
excited. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since we started chatting to each other online, and now
Yes,
to have a real meaningful conversation with you is actually so special.
I
Um,
agree. I agree. I've actually, when I was saying to a friend and a colleague of mine about your podcast, and I shared a little bit about it, looks fantastic. I shared this is my
Thank you
this
so
is
much.
my friend from
Yeah.
across the globe. But I do know that we've had a lot of great conversations online, and now to chat with you this way is fantastic.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I want to introduce you with
Okay,
some information, what I know about you.
great.
Carmen Morin, uh, an international award-winning concert pianist, an educator and owner of one of the largest music schools in Calgary, entrepreneur that runs a bricks and mortar business and also an online business, and you're doing multiple millions of dollars a year, a business coach, strategist, and somehow in between all of this, you found the time now to study psychology. Like, I mean, it's just amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, whenever I hear it listed out like that, it goes, wow, it sounds like such a big variety, but I just see so much how they're all connected, right? And I think like
Yeah,
that psychology piece
yeah,
is really at the center of each of those things that I'm doing anyways. So I know when I shared that I was pursuing that, I feel like that's been at the root of everything that I do anyways already, right?
yeah, yeah. I also left out other things. I mean, there were more
Well,
things to add in, but we'll get into those
yeah.
just now.
No, thank you.
But I'm glad you're in front of the piano because the
Yes.
first thing I would love to talk about with you is music and your background. And actually, looking at your background, I saw that you started your lessons at 2 with your dad.
I
Is
did,
that right?
yes. Yeah, so I'm born into a musical family. I'm the youngest of three siblings, and in our home, basically as soon as you could sit upright, you were playing the piano. I never knew
Yeah,
anything without playing the piano. When people say, "Can you imagine not doing that?" And that sounds like, not reading, not writing. It's just a part of everything that we did during the day. But I definitely owe the way that I see my music journey connecting to everything else in my life to the way that we were brought up through music, because it really was used as this model of how we approach challenges, how we draw out the full potential in ourselves. There was a lot of um, mental coaching and motivational talks in home all the time, kind of centered around music, but then drawing attention to how it applies to every other area of our life, right?
yeah. What's your earliest recollection of learning music at home?
Oh, learning Suzuki folk songs with my dad. Really, I just remember being so fascinated. I remember looking forward to sitting down at the piano with my dad. I remember being actually one of the earliest memories I have is being so excited that I learned how to play a broken triad. And I was just so
Right?
proud of myself, and I was telling everybody about it, and it was just kind of this um, all consuming focus that I would think about during the days. Yeah, I have
Yeah,
very early memories just sitting at the piano in our living room, learning finger numbers. I remember quite a lot actually from those early, early days. Yeah.
that's amazing. And you debuted with the orchestra at 10?
At 10, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
playing Ravel Piano Concerto, first movement.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Lovely.
yes, oh, just so many wonderful memories of it, and yeah, it's a wonderful memory. That was the first time, and I just remember being so excited to get out there. I remember focusing the whole year that, there was this competition coming up that you could play with orchestra, um, and I just had my sights set on it. And I did. It's interesting because when I look back, I just realized how there was no doubt in my mind of whether or not I would do it. It was like this is going to happen in June, So that self-assured confidence of a young child who's never known anything
And
different.
did you know at that stage that that's what you wanted to do, like, or at least the direction that your life was going to take?
To a degree, one of the things that's in the archives on my YouTube channel is an interview that I had when we were all going to the national finals when I was slightly younger than that, so I was about 8 years old. And the interviewer was asking myself and my siblings some questions about what we wanted to do. And right away, I said I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach
Yeah.
piano when I grew up. And, along with that interview, that's the one that's online, but I have many things around the home, keepsakes, things like business cards that I made for my school when I was a child,
Yeah.
right? So
Oh,
it was
wow.
named Carmen's Clef is what I named it. I had all these kind of business cards
Yeah.
made up about, and it was like best piano lessons in the world, like all these kind of things that I wanted. So I think at the root of it, I've always known that I wanted to be a teacher. And even when I pursued, post-secondary, my original plan was, I think as we've discussed before, my original plan was
Yes.
to go into marketing or a commerce degree. And I just
Yeah.
felt myself drawn to, at the root of what I'm doing, I want it to be tied to educating and music and the thing that I love. So I ended up pursuing a combination of both, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful that you ended up being able to do what you love and to be able to run a business out of it as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I've been very passionate about speaking openly about, and even when talking about
I
earnings
think I
of the
lost her.
company, things like that. A lot of the decision behind doing that, because I know that's not always typical or necessary. A lot of the reasoning behind that is because I wanted to advocate that you can build a thriving, successful, and healthy business in the arts if it's what you love, right?
I lost you for a few seconds there.
I was gonna say I kept
Yeah.
talking, but you froze. But I didn't know if my channel was still streaming, so we can go back. But
Okay.
like I wasn't
Oh,
gonna
as long
pause
as,
in
well,
case. Yeah,
no, it's fine.
yeah.
I think thanks to Riverside, it will get your recording
I was
anyway.
gonna
So,
say yeah. I'm like
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
gonna keep finishing the sentence. You can clip this all out after. Yeah.
Yeah. And then after your debut with the orchestra, did a bit of a tour after that? More concerts? And
Yes, yep. I won a few competitions after that. That was I
yeah,
was able to play with orchestra a few other times, and then an opportunity came up to. It was a collaboration at the time between an arts organization and the Canadian Embassy, and we got to go and give performances. Sala Chopin, we got to play in just on behalf of Canada, so representing Canadian talent. And it was a great experience. It was
yeah,
lovely to meet musicians from other parts of the world, not from North America, which is where I had kind of spent a lot of my time. So that was a really, really memorable, informative experience.
yeah. When you were young, in addition to playing, did you listen to a lot of music?
Obsessively, yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting because only now do I realize that's not always the case. But no, I would
yeah,
obsessively listen to music every day, actually, and not just classical music, although I
yeah,
would do what I still do, which is like when I was learning the Ravel concerto, for example, when I was focused
yes,
on winning that first kind of competition with orchestra, I would we would have a CD that we would have to go and get from the public library because for all
yeah,
the kids out there, we didn't have any streaming. We had to go downtown to a library and
yeah,
get the CDs of the recordings that we wanted, right? Um, and I would replay certain sections that I loved, and I would replay and repeat them, right? But then I would also, my dad has a very extensive and diverse taste and background in music. So we would listen to,
yeah,
blues, we would listen to Queen, we would listen to Baroque, we would listen to kind of everything. There was always, always music in the house that I would,
yeah,
stare at the CD covers and listen all day long. So yes, listening was a big part of just getting excited about music, enjoying music, kind of feeling that visceral
Yeah.
experience that you have of music. I do remember a lot of that, laying down in front of, we had these big speakers in our living room, and I would lay down and look at CD covers and just listen. So yeah, there was quite a lot
Yeah.
actually. Hmm.
And do you remember like the pieces that connected with you on the deepest level?
Yes, I mean, the Ravel Piano Concerto, going back to that one again, that was the
Yeah.
first, because prior to that I had learned several Mozart concertos, which I loved, of course.
Hmm.
But at that concerto was one that I had heard the year prior when we went to the national finals. And that was one of the first pieces that just got me so excited. Like, I need to do that. I want to play that. I
Yeah.
have to do that. And so I did. There was actually a lot of,
Yeah.
because it was kind of a higher level than what I may have been playing before. I had
Yes.
to do a lot of persuasion to kind of get my dad to let me learn that the following year, right? And I just, because I was so drawn to it and so excited for it. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Do you play any other Ravel pieces?
Yes, of course. I mean, I've
Yeah.
experimented, over the years, explored for sure. I think that one, that concerto has just a big place in my heart
Okay.
because it was that first one that I did. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And was it always the piano for you, or did you experiment with any other instruments?
So I didn't, pardon me, I didn't learn any instruments formally growing up aside from piano, but I loved the flute and always wanted to learn the cello. So as an adult, I
Okay.
did do some cello lessons. I've never experimented with the flute.
Yeah.
But we would go to competitions and listen to the different instruments, and I would get very inspired by them for sure. But
Yeah.
no, never learned any others formally. Yeah.
The piano is a bit different with any other instrument. I remember listening to um, another pianist. I can't remember the chap's name. It was in one of the documentaries, but he said for a pianist, you have to master this massive instrument,
Hmm.
but with almost every other instrument, you embrace it in some way. There's
Hmm.
an intimate relationship with the artist and that instrument where you would hold it either in your arms or between your legs. But
Mm.
the concert piano is this massive machine that you have to
Hmm.
manage. Yeah,
Hmm. And still connect with in that way, and that body connection I know is a big part of what I work on with students and talk about, is that there is that body
yeah,
connection, but there has to be that malleable kind of flexible way that you can move with the instrument, and even though it's not
yeah,
going anywhere,
yes,
right?
yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
So that awareness needs to be even more heightened.
Do you remember how we connected?
I think it was when I was working on Mephisto Waltz, right?
Yes, it was.
Yes,
Yeah, it
yes,
was.
yeah, and that
It
was
was.
years and years ago. I'm curious how
Yes.
many years ago that was, now that
I
I think
actually
of
don't
it.
know.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think I just,
some time back. Yeah.
yeah, but again, when I told my friend that I was coming on your podcast, I'm
Yeah.
like, we've been friends for years, right? Because I
Yeah.
do feel like
Yeah.
we've been chatting for years. Yeah.
Like with that, I've always listened to a lot of Liszt,
Mm-hmm.
and the Mephisto, that the first Mephisto waltz is one of those pieces it's played so often,
Mm-hmm.
but and I've heard it so many times, but there was something special about hearing you play it. You know,
Mm.
it captured my attention, and
Thank you.
that doesn't often happen. And you've got a different level of connection with the music, and
Thank you.
obviously it's you. But I wondered, is there something special in Canada because you guys produced some incredible artists. So you've got Glenn Gould, you've got Mark
Yes.
Andre Hamlin, you've got Oscar Peterson. Like,
Yes.
is it the air? What's happening in Canada?
Maybe it's the air. Yes, it's the glacier water up here. I do know, in our city we have many young musicians, like Kevin Chen, who's just,
Yes.
he studies with my teacher, who was my teacher here in Calgary. So many that come out. I do think that there is something about, this is my personal belief, there is something
Mhm.
about the work ethic and kind of the authenticity that I think people bring to their craft. And that is not to say that that's not everywhere else in the world, but there is something unique about, um, I think, the way that people want to connect and the way that they're willing to work on that craft
Mm.
to connect, right? So that's again what I see in what I would observe of what could be what sets us apart, right?
Mm.
as Canadian musicians. But no, I think that's, well, and I'll just say maybe it's also the long winters because we have lots of time indoors to practice. Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah, I
that's,
guess so.
yeah,
I
I'm
guess
like, now
so.
that let's do both sides of what it
Yeah.
could be. That's always speculation. Who knows, right? But
We're in the middle of winter in Durban at the moment, and you'll probably
okay.
have a laugh because for us it's a frigid day. It's absolutely, cold for us.
Okay.
It's 18 degrees Celsius.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's our summer. That's a
And
lovely
yeah,
day. We're out at the pool. We're out at the pool in that
yeah.
weather, right?
We're
So yeah.
struggling. We're struggling. Yeah.
Yes. You're indoors. That's
I came
funny.
in with a beanie today.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's too funny, actually. That's great.
Yeah, that's Durban. But you were part of the Mount Royal University faculty for a number of
Mm,
years. You
yes.
were
Yeah.
teaching, yeah?
Yes, that's where I started my teaching.
Mm,
I was there for 5 years and had a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it was really great because I had studied there, of course, as in my youth. So to be
mm,
offered a position, it was wonderful, and I have many great things about my experience there. And then they were also quite supportive, the university, when I opened my school. Right, so they
yes,
recognized me with an award after I opened, and that
yes,
really meant a lot because just to have that kind of support, and the large institution in the city, and opening your own institution, it's
yes.
you want to make sure that you're respecting and honoring everything that you've come from, and it was really, so it was a really lovely surprise to receive that from them.
Yeah. So that must have been a huge step for you, going from faculty to opening your own school. Um, and was that a scary experience?
It was. I will never downplay, I mean, all of the risk involved in just entrepreneurship, right?
Mm,
But in a big way, though, that was always part of my plan, right?
with your
I
little
always,
business cards?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I kind of always knew that it would be a matter of time. I didn't know when it was going to be. I don't think that I knew it was going to be that early in my career,
Yeah,
but it really did just feel like time, right?
yeah. And you've built that up into quite a substantial school. I believe you've
Yes.
got 40 faculty members and 1,000 students. Is that
Yes,
right?
oh, yeah, a little
That's
over for both.
massive.
So a little over
Yeah?
40, a little over. Yeah, it's been fantastic,
Wow.
and it's I should share a little bit about how that started. It really starts,
Yeah.
it begins it began how many things begin, pardon me, how many things begin, which is
Yeah.
just wanting to, you know, align yourself with people who are like-minded, to be able to offer something of value, to be able to be in service to people, right? And so when I started doing that on
Mm,
my own, what naturally happened is other teachers kind of being drawn to, hey, let's collaborate. So it actually started. I had a network of teachers in the city. I was offering some group classes for preschool kids, for example, in community centers. It was kind of like it became this network that was spread around. So by the time I opened the commercial space, we already had, I think 300 students by the time we
wow.
opened, right? So, and even from a business standpoint, I try to express that to people as well. People think, okay, I'm going to open a school, so right away I'm going to build the commercial space, build out the renovation, all of these things that you think have to be there first. They don't actually have to
Mm,
be there first. You can go step by step and gradually work towards something that makes it very low risk by the time you're ready to take a big step, like building out a
mm,
commercial space, right?
mm. And do you teach all instruments at the school? What do you cover?
Not all instruments, but primarily we're piano, guitar, and
Yeah,
voice, violin, cello. We have
yeah,
flute and saxophone and clarinet, so it's a smaller group. And then we do all of our theory, history, composition.
yeah.
We have our preschool program, so early childhood music education. So for our
Okay.
youngest ones from zero to five, and then yeah, so a wide range. But I would say piano, guitar, voice, and actually I'll also say violin is becoming quite a
Violin.
big
Yeah.
component of the program as well. Yeah, so it's been, again, just fabulous to watch how things kind of naturally evolve, and the colleagues that are drawn to what we're doing and align with our philosophies.
And that must be so special to have kids like from the very beginning right up, I guess, till
It,
adulthood, right?
it and it's honestly, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this November, actually, since I opened the
Mm,
school, because I opened it November
yeah.
2013. Yeah. And just the growth of the community, and really it's the kids, right? Like we've got
Yeah.
kids who started, as beginners, and they're going off to university now, right? And
Wow.
they're you're just watching them grow. And I have to say, like in a lot of my philosophy and what I share, it's that, using music and music lessons and the discipline of music, there's no better vehicle to
Yeah.
cultivate values, to create connection, to really shape like the confidence and the belief that these people of all ages have in themselves. And
Yeah.
so being able to do that and watching them grow, like, in every way is just so, so rewarding, so
Yeah, I
gratifying.
can imagine. It's so
Oh,
beautiful.
yes, no.
And with these kids, can you spot talent very young?
Mm.
Um,
That's a great question. That's a great question because it opens up a whole other conversation of,
yeah.
so we are strong, the nature versus nurture, right?
Yes.
So I'm definitely espouse the idea that talent, everyone has seeds of talent within them,
Mm.
right? And it's through that
Yeah.
active cultivation of certain traits, certain work habits, certain skills that can be built in all of us,
Yeah.
that you can draw that out, right? So as
Yeah.
much as we can, everyone can have their own gifts. There are people that will have certain athletic gifts, certain, spatial awareness, all these different things that you can see and
Yes.
you can recognize, wow, that's a gift that you have. But ultimately, they don't mean anything unless you draw them out, right? So a lot of what we focus on, and even what our mission is building the hearts and the minds of our students through music, right? And
Mm.
it's that element of we're actively drawing out what those gifts are, what those gifts might be, and always having faith that everyone has them. So I know that it can sound cliche in some ways, that you're just kind of saying, oh, everyone has their gifts, but truly they do. It's more about giving them skills of how they're going to draw those out.
Okay. How do you help them with those skills? How do you help them to identify those?
Yeah, in many different ways. I mean, and it's interesting that you start with identifying them, because I think that's a big part of any kind of investment that we're going to make. We have to believe that it's possible for us, right?
Mm.
Like if you can say,
Yes.
hey, this is possible, but if I can't really see how is that possible for me, then I'm not necessarily going to do the work, right?
Mm.
So really, it's that emphasis on building the tools that they need to actively draw out their skills, right? So it's everything
Okay.
from actively drawing out their physical skills on with their
Mm.
technique, right? But then also giving them the tools of understanding how they're going to get in tune with their own musicality. There's a big component of collaboration with parents at our studio. So
Mm.
from the earliest ages in our early childhood programs, they're modeling in the preschool classes, scaffolding with the exercises that we're doing, really acting as models through that observational learning. But then all throughout the instrumental lessons, we really value and support that the parents are really the child's first and primary teacher, right?
Okay.
So we work in collaboration with them to help them to recognize where they might, need to offer extra support for their kids, how we can give them the tools to work with them at home, and it really becomes this active growth. Nobody's sitting there, giving a lesson and then sitting there waiting for talent to appear. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so like not what we do at all, right? It's like we can
Yeah.
make this happen, and when you do that, what happens is you become feeling so empowered with the skills that you can actively grow, as opposed to, you know, demonstrating and saying, okay,
Yes.
am I talented yet? Right? It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
completely different experience, and that's where we also find there's so much transfer between what they learn in their music lessons and how they can apply this to anything else that they want to do. Right?
Okay. Yeah. And do
Yeah.
you curate your own syllabus? Do you use anything external?
Yeah. No, for the repertoire that we choose for students.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I mean, for
So
example, like Trinity. I think
yeah.
some people use Trinity College.
Yeah, so we love
Yeah.
Trinity London for our in-person exams. I mean, there are many conservatory streams, right? So we've got the ones
Yeah.
here in Canada, but lots more of our students are doing things like ABRSM because they've
Hmm.
launched into their online lessons. But when we think of syllabus, you're thinking kind of repertoire, right? And a lot of that
Yeah.
is
I
going to be,
guess. Yeah.
yeah, so that's going to be kind of standard repertoire that's similar in all of the different streams, right? So again, we can choose that based on what their goals are and what, where they want to get their certification, how it applies to the school system here, because they do get credits for it at school. But then ultimately, we make sure to focus on what the student needs next, right? So this is a very traditional approach in that, I mean, not everything that we do is very traditional, but it's going back to even before there were standardized exams, where instead of making your choice on what the students learn next based on what's listed in a syllabus, you go, okay, what do you need in your development, right? What do you actually need next? And do you really need to do this list of 5 pieces? Or if I want to cultivate something specific, maybe you need to work on something else, right? So when we bring on our teachers, we actually give them training in how to choose what to do with their students, right? So it again comes into asking, where they want to get that certification from, right? Because the different streams have different kind of standards and where they're placed internationally, all those things. But then we offer them some tools and guidance on how to choose what's best for them, right? So we don't have our teachers come and say every piano student has to learn from this book
to learn the same.
and then go into this stream, because that's really counter to what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to really individualize that learning pathway for each of the kids.
Yeah, I think it's so important also for each individual's development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And it also, I will say, oh, sorry.
No, you carry on.
And I will say, because I think in your early teaching, it's very helpful, and in many stages of teaching, to be able to rely on something like a syllabus. What do we do next? Someone tell me what to do next, and I'll do it well, right? But I will say, when I started to kind of expand outside of that, I was still always using the exams as that framework and that skeleton to kind of have checkpoints to assess. But I will say that my teaching changed quite a lot when I kind of said, okay, that's good that that's there as a way to standardize this, but what do I think you need next, right? And how can I kind of be responsive? And I think it really changes your teaching quite a lot as well.
Okay, that makes sense. Did it also help you with your own evolution?
Absolutely. Yep. Evolution in my own teaching, I think also empowering the teachers as well to acknowledge that we are all lifelong students, right?
Yes.
So there's this idea is that we get done and then it's like, and now we have flipped the roles and now I'm going to tell you what to learn.
Yeah.
And it's like there's no more of that growth, but it's like that ongoing, we're all still learning. And it takes practice for all of us, right? To make these decisions, to be confident that we can make those decisions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I found sometimes with teaching different things that in the process of teaching someone something, I can sometimes understand it better myself and improve my own performance in whatever that aspect is.
100%. And from an educational standpoint, it's the highest level of learning. Is like when you can switch that and now explain it to someone else in a way that makes sense. Apply different context and nuance and how you explain it. Right? You're absolutely right. It teaches you so much about yourself and your own playing, your own listening. Right? Those kinds of things.
Yes. Yeah. So, I'm curious. How do you develop artistry in a student? Because I guess it's fairly easy to become technically proficient and perhaps play mechanically, but to develop artistry really is the secret sauce, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a loaded question, right? Because there's so many different angles and perspectives that you could take there. I think that, anytime that you are learning something where you want to express your own artistic voice, first of all, you do have to make sure that you have the skills to do so. So when we talk about, it's easy to become technically proficient, or easier, or like the focus that many will make, is that always approaching that as, first of all, you need that craft to be honed in order to have an outlet for your expression, right? Because ultimately, even if I have all these profound ideas with depth and context and everything, but if I can't actually get it out, right, it's like a poet. It's like if I don't have the words to say, then I can't actually get it out, right? So there is that element that the technique plays a very important role, and I think that's often also overlooked. People will say, I'm not really worried about the technique part. I just want to think about the artistry, right? So you do need that level of craft. As far as developing your own voice and your own artistry, I think there are constants that you see along all the art forms, which is that element of It's, you know, Picasso's quote, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's this element in early stages of artistry where right away it's like, well, let everyone kind of explore, which of course you should, but there is that growth that comes when your thinking is giving some kind of compartmentalized parameters, right? So there are kind of rules that you can follow with, you know, phrasing, shape, growth, understanding all these different things, color, right? So you kind of give those parameters, and then going into how that creates a language that we communicate through. And once you get to that point, when you're really kind of focusing with detail about what are those sounds, what are those markings on the page telling us about what we can communicate, could communicate, then putting that into context, then you get to shape your own ideas, right? So it's very similar to if you were to talk about something like language, and of course music and language have so many similarities on how we process, on how we experience, on the regions of the brain, all of those things, right? Is that you start first by teaching the words, right? I need to learn the words, then I need to learn the meaning of the words, then I need to know this kind of formal structure of how I put that into sentences, then I can play with it, right? So I think there is that element where sometimes teachers, I find, it's that balance that we are always playing of like, we want to make sure our students know, yes, all of this of your own creation, it's all coming, this is all part of it. Start here with these building blocks, and then let's talk about them, explore what they mean to you, and then you have that context where you can change things and make things your own.
Yeah. You liken music to a language, and there's a beautiful quote by Claude Levi-Strauss. I don't know if you've heard that one before, where he likens music to a language, but I think I can find it and read it to you because I
I'd love
think
to hear it.
you'll quite enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
I had it somewhere here. But let me search for it.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll have a sip of my tea. We can edit this.
Okay. Yeah, we can flip it out because it's actually such a beautiful quote. I really want you to hear it.
I do want to hear
I'm
it
just
also.
going to open Claude Levi-Strauss and music. It'll show up in images, I'm sure. I didn't realize Claude Levi-Strauss had this many quotes on music.
Oh,
Isn't that terrible?
that's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
but it's
Maybe type in
where is
music
it
and
now?
language.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, I know what to search for. Language. I'm giving it away if I tell you my search term.
Oh,
Da. They only have half the quote. Oh, here we go. Found it.
okay.
I have it.
Great.
Okay. Music is a language by whose means messages are elaborated, that such messages can be understood by the many, but sent out only by few, and that it alone among all the languages unites the contradictory character of being at once intelligible and untranslatable. These facts make the creator of music a being like the gods.
Oh, that gave me goosebumps. That gave me goosebumps when you read, truly.
Isn't it beautiful?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful and eloquent and quite poetic. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. Um, you have you have a very interesting philosophy on practice and how to practice. Can you get into that with us?
Absolutely. I mean, how to practice, again, there's, you know, lots that you can go into, different elements. So, of course, there's the first one that I've touched on a little bit is that your practice is an active thing that we do. And of course, that seems like a given, but very often practice is talked about as that investment of time solely, right? So of course that repetition and that time, it is a component, but it's a necessary component, but it's not everything that makes up effective practice, right? So of the many things that I like to talk about with practice is that ultimately what you're doing is you're training an adaptable skill. right? So it's not about that repetition of finding something that you know, get to a satisfactory level
Yes.
and then repeating it 10,000 times so that on the 10,001 the first time you can do it on stage, right? It's
Yes.
really about
You just
training a
described how
skill.
I practice.
Okay, there. Well, then let's talk about this then. Yes, okay. And how so many do, right? But ultimately, if you're trying to build confidence and strength and resilience in your skills, what you need to do is you need to actively be shaping them and actively testing them, right? So when you get something to a satisfactory level and you feel confident that you can do it well, then that's a sign that you need to kind of throw something else into the mix so that you're strengthening it in a different way, right? You hear about this with things like, you know, Tiger Woods, when was learning to golf as a child, his dad would throw his ball into, you know, a bunch of bushes and say, okay, you have to
Yeah.
hit it out from there, right? So that seems like, oh, that's, you know, character building, all those things. But what it's actually doing is it's strengthening your skills because it's become too easy for you to do it in this way. We need to make it harder, right? And
Yeah.
there's this constant kind of element of testing your skills, training them to adapt with resilience, and then applying something else, right? So again, it's that constant deepening, that constant growth, that by the time you feel like it is automatic, the learning process in your body, in your mind, is going to be very different, right? You want to kind of get to that point of working. And when you practice in that way, not only does it give you that empowerment of you are actively shaping skills, but it gives you a completely different level of confidence, because it's a very different feeling to say, okay, I've played this well 10 times, so on the 11th time I'm going to play it in a concert and I hope it goes well. Versus, you know, I've tested this in 100 different challenging ways. I've played it hands separate from memory. I've played it backwards. I've played it blindfolded. I've played it in a noisy shopping mall. I've played it here. I've played it with no sleep. I've played it when I have the stomach flu. You know, like all these different
Yeah.
things that you can test. That's a different feeling when you get up to present and share, because ultimately in a live performance, something could happen. That's the nature of live, right? That's the trade-off of getting that live energy and that live dynamic. But whatever does, you have a different level of confidence in your way to adapt because you've tested your
Okay.
skills in so many different ways, right?
Oh,
So
that makes so much sense. Yeah.
yes, yeah. And so I mean, like in my practice course, I break it down in a framework. I'm very much about like framework mental models, right? But
Yeah.
in my newsletter that I've done for my business clients, right? So I'm always kind of
Yes.
looking for those overlaps. So if this is kind of a good way to segue to that, is that I've named it
Yes.
principles of practice,
Yeah.
right? Because so obviously drawing on my experience as a classical pianist, but then explaining to people in other industries, like your practice is your craft that you are shaping, and there are ways that you are going to actively do this, and you know, it's not just a matter of putting in your time. How are you going to actively shape the growth and the level of what you can do,
Yeah.
right? So that's where I've kind of brought in that crossover, because everyone has a practice. The way that we practice things is ultimately who we become. We're really actively shaping
Yeah.
our character. We're actively shaping our outcomes, right? So
Yeah.
yes, I'm very passionate about the topic for sure.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you you brought this up, and we're shifting gears, but uh, the transition from the bricks and mortar business into becoming this digital business mogul that
Oh,
you've become.
thank you. Yeah.
How did this all happen?
So it's interesting because I first kind of even made an announcement. It's funny when you look back. I said we're launching Morin Music online back in 2018, right? And so it was really in my mind and heart of hearts, I knew that this element of, you know, global music school, connecting with others. So we launched, but mainly in, you know, Zoom lessons, right? So we were
Yes.
offering virtually. It also came from one of our full-time teachers, very, very valued teacher of moved out east in Canada, and we were able to keep lots of his students with him, right? So we said, you know, let's branch out, let's, you know, go to these Zoom lessons. In the back of my mind, I always knew that it offered lots of opportunity for just the impact that you could have by offering something
Yeah.
that could be repeatable, you know, packaging what I do privately with students. And then, of course, the pandemic was that nudge that if I don't do this now, I'm definitely not going to do it, right? So I had kind
Yeah.
of thought about it for many years, and then that's when I just got to work. I kind of had an idea already of what I wanted to present and what I wanted to share. So that was Piano Foundation Formula. And it was really, really eye-opening in so many different ways. So from a business standpoint, and just the way that our world is moving, just how important it is to codify really what you do in a way that is repeatable, scalable, and really can help so many people at an international level on their way to working with you and learning from you, right? So that was on one side of it, is the business side of it, going like, this is fascinating, like this is a very valuable and should be part of every small business, right? And that's kind of what happened that led to the coaching. On the other side of it was for me as an educator, because I think that there's this element of, if you're going to put something in an online course or online, program, curriculum, whatever it is, that ultimately the quality is going to have to be way less. Right? Like there is that kind of idea that, okay, and of course, private one-on-one lessons is the gold standard. You're never going to replicate that fully. Even in Zoom lessons, you're not going to replicate that. But when presented in a way that offers a very specific model, a very specific framework for learning, and also elements of asynchronous learning in the programs, as well as feedback, as well as community, there were all these different things that I was realizing, like, this is very, not just viable, but it's possible to really build healthy programs and sustainable programs, not just, here, buy my course. It's like, here, this is something very important that you can learn in this way, right? So that
Absolutely.
so that was really exciting to kind of start out with that.
I was one of your early students, right?
Yes, in the founding group, I think, in the very first group of kind of testing it out is what you do with the founding group, right? And so that was really great, and a lot of those have continued on into what it's evolved to, which is Momentum Piano Academy, which is really this combination of it's not private lessons, but it's not a course. It's like a combination of asynchronous and live components. It's mental models and frameworks, and the students in there are just doing incredibly well in their playing. Like we have people who started as beginners and they're getting high 90s on their Trinity London exams, going through to the advanced levels. Like it's just been so fascinating as an educator to see what a viable option it can be for education.
And this has also opened up the world to you because you have students in, 25 countries?
Yes,
or more?
yeah. Yes, and it's been interesting we have many, many students, of course, in USA and Canada, but many students, for example, from Australia, United Kingdom, Singapore, right? So it's kind of been interesting to see. So we do these live performance classes, for example, or live practice sessions, all these different things that we do in our community. And it's interesting because we line up all the time zones. We've got people in Qatar, we've got people in Australia, right? And it's like we have to kind of make a time that works well for all. But it's been really, really amazing. And what I've felt working with this group, it just seems like such a mirror of what we have in our school. But at this international level and with adult students. And it's been very exciting.
And what levels of students do you take in the Momentum Academy?
All levels. So we have, as far as the repertoire, so it's similar to what you would have seen in Piano Foundation Formula, where it's like we're giving there are components of it that apply to all levels, but then it splits off into repertoire, where you can get feedback on different levels of playing, but then all will come together for certain components like the performance, practicing, mental coaching, all of those things apply to everyone. And just as in the school, in the brick and mortar school, in our music school here, the students learn so much from each other. So regularly the advanced students, we have teachers in there that are playing at an advanced level and they're teachers themselves. And they'll often say how much they learn by hearing the feedback given to the beginner students, right, at the foundational level. And then vice versa, the beginner students will look to advanced students to learn from their experiences. So it's really a lot of that conversation of, like what we just talked about with the school, everyone's actively growing their skills. The beginner might look at the advanced student and say, oh, I wish I could be there one day. Right, and that's the end goal. But the advanced student, as you and I both know, is going,
Yeah.
there's still so much to do. There's still so much to learn, and they're still
Yes.
thinking of themselves as the beginner, which as they should.
Yeah.
We're all still learning and growing, right?
Yeah.
So it's just been really exciting, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful community. I'm very thankful for.
Oh, we must definitely put the links in this video description as well. So
Mhm.
anybody that's watching this, especially in South Africa, that would be interested, I think
Absolutely,
possibly you'll get some support from here.
that would be great. Yeah, we'd
Yeah.
love to have. Yeah.
And so you started with the piano academy online, and you did that, and that wasn't enough for you. And you decided, okay, I'm going to now teach people how entrepreneurs, how to make their businesses go global. So, uh, how did that happen?
Yeah, so that happened. I mean, I'm a big believer, and you and I have talked about this, that
Yeah,
in our discussions, is that I'm a big believer in that there are unique aspects to each of us, and to honor those, we can't discount when we feel very inspired by something, very excited for something, when we find ourselves drawn to it.
yes,
So for me, the other element that I love talking about, as you know, are things like business, data, marketing, automations, these things that are probably not sounding related to music at all, but
yeah,
I can geek out over all of it, right? I've got spreadsheets on spreadsheets of
yeah,
percentages, search engine keywords, like that. I love that
yeah,
stuff, right? And I always have, right? As we mentioned, my original
yes,
plan was, okay, do I go into commerce and
yeah,
marketing or music? And it was music because that's my passion. That's at the core of
yes,
who I am. But it was always in my mind of like, I'm going to get out in front and I want to show people how amazing music. I really want to be an
yeah,
advocate for music and the arts, and that takes an element of
yeah,
marketing, right? So digital
absolutely.
marketing, the funnels, the pages, copywriting. I'm, SEO copywriting. I'm very focused on. That's a whole other thing that I love. So when it came down to it, I knew that um, I wanted to provide something where I can kind of share my experiences and just how much possibility and growth there is, not just for you as business and numbers and revenue, but in this global impact. Because I'm working with this incredible group of musicians that I would have never even met if it wasn't for this online, right? And I feel tangible outcomes that are happening in the United Kingdom that I'm just so
Mm,
thankful to be a part of, right? So that's really special as a teacher. So initially I thought maybe I would do something specifically for music owners, but I have a very wide range of, colleagues and friends that I love hearing about what's unique about what they do, right? So what it ended up becoming is I began helping just kind of on a one-on-one basis to start helping people to hone in on what's unique about their own thought leadership, about the way that they approach things in their own industries, right? So kind of started to have those discussions, and then realizing that any small business owner or solopreneur
mm,
can be applying this to what they do, right? So of course I do have musicians and music teachers in my coaching and consulting program,
yeah,
but I also have, psychologists, book coaches, aesthetic dentists, estheticians, right? Like, so all of these different
mm,
businesses, and ultimately helping them to find what's unique about what they do, and then teaching them all of the business practices to get it online in a way that's sustainable, that doesn't rely on social media, that is something that they can have healthy long-term growth as a business. It's very, very exciting and rewarding as well.
yeah. It's quite fascinating that it's digital, but you say it's not reliant on social media. And I think people's perceptions are that everything relies on social media if you're selling digitally. So how do you accomplish that?
Absolutely. And I think that's usually one of the first kind of myths that I try to bring to mind. So when it comes to social media, obviously it's an incredible tool that you should use in your online business. But what most people don't realize is that it's a very, very small component of actually growing your business. So if you think about the different platforms, of course there are platforms that will grow and appreciate in value, right? And
Mm,
types of content that you can put online that's going to continue to bring people to your business. But then there are also those that actually keep people off your business. So
mm,
for example, and I know this is going to be broad sweeping, so it won't apply to all. I just don't want to kind of offend anyone who's spending all their
Sure.
time on short form social media. But a lot of how it's designed, if you're trying to build followers, it's things like share lots of how-to content. If you want to build an audience, you're going to be rewarded by the platform by keeping them on the platform, right? Typically, you have to reduce things to being in a way that's easily digestible. A lot of those things are actually the opposite things that you would want to do to get people off of the platform and into your business, right? So it's that element of if you are trying to build the platform or if you're trying to build your own business, right? So a lot of that was learned by being able to work with mentors who are just doing phenomenally in the space and a very small social media following, and asking and kind of learning about that, because there's that element of if you want to build up influencer status and have the vanity numbers of a large following, many people who do that earn very, very little. And actually it's the wide majority. So the majority of influencers, actually the stat, earn below the poverty line by being by approaching things in that way, right? So it's definitely been something that when I first started, I kind of figured I had to ramp up my social media. The truth was that when this all launched, I first of all was very busy, so I just did less and less social media. But it was like the less that I focused on it, the more my online business grew. Because as opposed to just trying to get 10,000 new, followers, I'm actually trying to get a smaller number of actual qualified, focused customers who want to collaborate with me, right? And that's a very, very different model of presenting yourself. So that really led me down the road of looking at more long-form appreciating content, which led me into things like SEO, into copywriting. So my kind of principle is that anything that I put online, I want it to still be supporting my business 3 years from now, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you
Kind
put
of evergreen, right?
Yeah, well, evergreen, but then also appreciating. So my programs are evergreen, but appreciating that the content grows in value. If you put something on one of the short form platforms like Instagram, for example, or TikTok, within about an hour, the value is almost entirely gone.
Yeah.
Right? And if there was value there, the value will show in that you've kept people on the platform and your follower count goes up, right? So that's where that whole idea of like the vanity metrics versus building a business.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's interesting. And the profit margins in the digital business are exciting, right?
They are absolutely, and I think that was another big component to why I try to advocate for it, because being a small business owner, really, like you become a small business owner in a service-based business because you truly love what you do, right? So a healthy service-based business like the school, you're looking at profit margins between 15 to 20%, and that's a healthy business. That's after you're done your startup, after you're done expansion, all of those things, and that's great. That's all very sound. But then when you move into the online space, you can have an equal size of business and revenue, but you're looking at between 80 to 90% profit margins, right? And that's even after things like ad spend. So when you start to take into account, recurring customers and long-term relationships, which again, this is focused on, it's entirely, it's just a completely different game as far as profits. So I like to kind of bring that up because I think there, again, is this element of that you have to go one or the other. But for me, what I try to advocate with Global Small Business, with the coaching program, is that every small business owner, you're really not just leaving lots on the table business-wise, but also in the impact that you can have by not offering another way that a global audience can access you and what you do.
And that digital offering is open 24/7 around the world. So your potential customer base is massive.
It's massive, and the thing is also is that you don't have to approach it. I think this is, when courses first launched and everyone was like, oh, look, you can just sell a product and all of that. It's like, okay, so everyone's kind of over that now. It can still be very profitable, but think about how much impact you can have 24/7. So if I know, like what you said about asking about my practice framework, right? I could talk about that in 8 different lessons every day, all day for the rest of my life and teach about that, which is wonderful. I love to talk about that. But if I present that in a scalable way, that I can get that out to a wide range of people, then when they're ready, they can move up to the next level, move up to the next level. By the time they reach the point that they would, work with any of our teachers or access me directly, they've already benefited so much by learning from my expertise, right?
And putting, or rather creating the digital kind of business that you have, it's also given you a lot more time, right? It's a very
Absolutely.
kind of time efficient business.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the other piece that I like to show in when clients are building out their curriculum, their thought leadership platform, all of that, is I show the difference in the profit margins, of course, because that's kind of like the practical. We have to know what we're investing in here. But then I show the difference in the time. And it's completely different because, of course, you don't have to have that exchange of time for revenue. But it's more than that because it gives you this element of always streamlining and really focusing your highest value resource, which is your time, right? Like that's the highest leverage. Ultimately, if you become very good at what you do and you have a high level of expertise, the highest leverage component is going to be your time and your attention, right? So just by doing that, it has really changed a lot of our systems in our brick and mortar school as well, because everything has trickled down to us looking for these ways that we can have the highest level of impact. Where should we be showing up live? Where should we be showing up in person? And where can we kind of spread our net wide and give this to a large number of people, right?
Yeah. Okay. So, to summarize on the digital business front, this is something you recommend to every small business owner, and they can learn how to do it by getting in touch with you, joining your programs online. Yeah.
And even just learning how, so I've got, if you go to carmenmorin.com, it shows you a welcome mat that brings you either to piano things or business consulting things,
Yeah.
right? But I absolutely, every service-based small business owner, I think it is something that must become a part of what you offer, because ultimately,
Yeah.
if you have knowledge, if you have expertise, then it's going to be a way that you can elevate not only your earning, create that margin in your business, but also elevate your authority in your industry, right? Like what you're
Okay.
known for, how you're known for having a specific mental model or framework that applies
Yeah.
to what you do.
When you embarked on this journey to start the digital business, could you have anticipated the level of success that you're enjoying now with it?
No, I mean, ultimately when I go into any new endeavor, like even the psychology, right?
Yeah.
I'm a very growth-minded person. I love a challenge, right? I
Yeah.
do well not knowing how it's going to turn out. I'm really good under
Okay.
those conditions because that's kind of like I'm very open about I'm just testing things out, right? And I've tested other things out where I kind of try it for 6 months. I go, oh, that's not for me, right?
Yeah.
But then, of course, if I feel inspired and drawn to it, it's a good sign that I should pursue.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that's really interesting is you are definitely always learning. You're open to
Yes.
continued learning. I know you're a bookworm. You're always
Yes.
reading something. So what's on
Always.
the
Yeah.
bookshelf at the moment?
At the moment, I'm actually reading about design thinking, which I've read about lots before. I'm reading a great deal about copywriting.
Yeah.
Yep, and I am, yeah, rereading actually a few books, right? I don't know if you
Yeah.
do that often, but I try
I
to.
do.
I have
Yeah.
some, yeah, I try to have some that I cycle through, and I feel like right now I'm in a rereading phase, and my grandmother would always read her books 3 times and would
Okay.
always say, the first time you read it, you're really just kind of exposed to the idea. The second time, it's like you really start to integrate it, and then the third time, you can really make it your own. You've internalized it, right? So I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm on
I think
to
you're,
reading
yeah.
every book 3 times, right? But there are those ones where you kind of walk by it on the bookshelf and you go, I think if I looked through that lens now, it would be very different than 5 years ago when I was at a completely different point in business and life. And so that's, I feel like, where I am where I am right now. But no, reading a
Okay.
lot about kind of your own thinking, shaping your own thinking. It's interesting because we just talked about the discipline of practice, right? But
Yes.
things like putting discipline and practice to your thinking and how you evaluate and what
Yeah.
you read, right? Like it's how much of what you read already aligns with what you think. And that's always nice and very
Yeah.
satisfying. But should we really be reading books that reaffirm everything we've
Your
already learned?
confirmation bias,
It's
right? Yeah.
confirmation bias, right? So I am trying to become more active and disciplined in if I find a book that I'm reading and going, yes, 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 that's all 100%, trying to find a book that might counter that, right?
Have
Whether or
you
not I
read
love it. Hmm.
have you read Thinking Fast and Slow?
Yes, yes. And that's
Yeah.
a great one. And
Okay.
that's actually one because I've got, again, as I geek out on spreadsheets, that's actually one on the list, but I would like to find one that counters that, right? Because it's that two
Yes.
systems. And I loved when I read that. And it was years ago that I read that. And
Yeah.
it's interesting when books are so well written, wonderful content, um, and convincing, you just instantly adopt it, right? And not saying
Yes.
that I won't continue to, but that's actually on my list of, I wonder if I can find a book that counters that.
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and so that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm actively trying to practice is like shaping what I consume and how it's reaffirming or expanding and making me think and
Yes.
I think that's very, very important.
Okay.
Mhm.
Um, and the decision to start studying psychology now.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yes.
tell us about that.
Yeah, so I have always, as you as we've just mentioned, lifelong learning. I've always read, just constantly loved to learn, and I was feeling the call to go back to school. I think my oldest is off to university now,
Yeah.
so I hadn't pursued graduate studies with a young family and everything, and I think it was always kind of on my mind that I would go back to school at some point, and I went to start looking at programs, and of course started in the music department, thinking, okay, this is
Yeah.
kind of the obvious. But I still actively take lessons. That's another area that I'm always learning and always growing. So I'm never done learning music. So when I looked at what I wanted to pursue at post-secondary, I found myself just being called to psychology. It's what I read the most about. It's what I love
Hmm.
to talk about. You've probably noticed even in our
Yes.
conversation, it's like everything music still comes back to how are we learning? How are we growing? What are those active steps? That has always been at the forefront um, of music for me, to be honest, right? So then I just kind of realized I was reading so many books on psychology, and one led me to a textbook on psychology to order. And so I ordered the textbook, and it came, and I just looked at it, and I'm like, okay, this is what I should be doing at school. Like, if
This is
I'm going
it.
to be doing something different at school, then I'm like on my free time reading textbooks about this, right? University textbooks. I should probably
Yeah.
just get some credit for what I'm doing, right?
Uh,
So, yeah. And it was nice because obviously it's an arts. The prerequisites are able to transfer over from the arts, and then just not a few courses, but a few courses left, and then can pursue that at the graduate level, which is nice. And then it applies very well to having the school because I'm certain I
yeah.
would focus in educational psychology, so it will really lend itself to curriculum development, but then also coaching and consulting. So it just seemed that perfect balance of the practical as well as what I'm feeling inspired for.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with all of this, you also lead a very active lifestyle.
Yes.
You play tennis and
Yep.
you're into Pilates,
Yes.
the gym. So,
Yes. Yes. I know that you and I align on that in how important that is. And it's important in so many ways. I mean, of course, I enjoy it. I love it. I feel like I'm always wanting to honor my body, honor my vessel that carries me through all of these things that I've just shared. But then also how important it is for our minds. Really,
mm,
everything we've talked about, our music, our learning, what we want to pursue, how we want to contribute. Ultimately, I can only do that well if I've taken care of my body well, right? My
mm,
body, and that's how I can fuel my mind. So things like sleep, I sleep a lot. I
yeah.
sleep, I prioritize sleep, I prioritize water, exercise, strength training, all of those things. And then of course, yes, fun like tennis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
I
Yeah.
was going to get to sleep because that's something
Mm.
that's really important to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. It is. And I say that now, I mean, and I try not to, I don't wear this with a badge of honor, but in the early stages of growing the school, I did not sleep much or at all. I actually, looking back, it just seems like insanity, but in those early stages, this is startup life as an entrepreneur that you don't see as much from unless you're behind the scenes, is once a week I would do an all-nighter where I would work through the night. So it was just, it happened a couple weeks in a row, and I was like, this makes me really efficient. I'm just going to not sleep at least one day a week and work through, and look at all this time I don't have to waste on sleep, and I would get so much done, right? That caught up with me, with my health, right? You cannot do that. And then what I found is that the quality of my sleep was directly correlated to my productivity, of course. The way that I can form ideas, the confidence I have to pursue them, all of that. It's such a simple concept, but that my dad would always say, it's like if things aren't working, drink a big bottle of water, go outside, and then get a good night's sleep, right? And it's like amazing. It's like it's like we always want to complicate and like, let's get our brains scanned and let's do all these different things and take all these supplements, and it's like, but did you sleep? Like, just drink some water, get some sunlight, go get a good night's rest. You'll feel completely different. So just those simple things, they compound over time, of course, as you know.
I've started something a few months ago, and I don't know if you've tried it or you'd be interested to, but like whenever I drink my water now, I always have salt in my water.
Oh,
So
interesting.
if I take a bottle of water to the gym, like maybe a liter bottle, I'll put in a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half of Himalayan salt.
Interesting.
And I've gotten so used to it now that I find regular water unsatisfying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what is
And
the basis behind that?
well, the logic behind it initially was when I started practicing more kind of ketogenic eating. You drop a lot of water, and when you
Yes.
drop water, you lose salt and you lose electrolytes. So you have to replenish that in some way, especially if you're doing ketogenic or carnivore. You have to have more salt. And what I've found is that by just adding the salt back in, it's made such a huge difference to my energy levels throughout the day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I will definitely look into that.
And if you use I use the sauna as well. So if you sweat a lot, you're losing salt and you have to replenish it.
you have to replenish it. Yeah, and you get a high quality Himalayan salt.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. No, thank you
So
for sharing. I will look
something worth trying.
It is absolutely, and something that I haven't considered before, which I always appreciate learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and do you do any mindfulness practices?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I do twice a day. I do HRV breathing, so heart rate
Right.
variability breathing with the inner
Okay.
balance. I don't know if you're familiar with Heart Math. Have we talked about that before?
No, we
The
haven't.
Heart Math Institute. Okay, yeah. So you just learned about kind of HRV and the importance of that heart, the neurons in our heart, how they connect to our mind, and
Yes.
just overall well-being, right? So I do that twice a day. I do typically pray at least once a day, right? And then
Yeah.
also meditate midday. So part of when I was looking at learning how to kind of optimize learning, memory, all of these things, I've read about the value of napping midday, right? And how
Yes.
important it is
Yeah.
to get those little naps. And I cannot nap. I've never
Yeah.
been able to nap. I can't remember ever napping, to be honest. Like if I'm up for
Yeah.
the day, I'm up. So I do, instead of a midday where my nap would be, because I block my day kind of by creativity. After I wake up, I do deep work, some other things. And then where my nap should be, I meditate. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I
All right.
cannot nap. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some people do it. They call it non-sleep deep rest.
Yes, I've tried
Yeah.
that as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've tried the Huberman Lab one.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
not
there we
long
go.
ago. Yeah, so I have tried it. Again, yeah, midday, because I can't actually doze off, but that's another great way.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I've never been able to
To
nap
nap.
in the
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one exception though, when I'm on my recliner on
Oh.
Saturday or Sunday, then it just seems to happen. You
Oh,
get
nice.
20 or 30 minutes of sleep.
That's nice.
Yeah.
No, I can't even on a plane, long flights, and I can be, but no, I can't nap.
Yeah. Okay. So the podcast is about peak performance, living your life with peak performance. And I'm
Yes.
curious what your
Yeah.
definition would be of a peak performance life.
What a great question. So for me, a peak performance life is a lot of the things that we just talked about. Honoring you yourself for all that you are, so your body, your mind, taking care of all those things, but then also that uniqueness of what makes you who you are, right? So even that have done this beautiful podcast is an example, is a shining example of that, right? Is that you would have been drawn to telling these stories, making those connections about what people are doing to rise to their highest self. Ultimately, I think it's a human need that we have to rise up to our full potential, and anything that supports us doing that is really our highest level performance. So what I like about that is that it's not about this external outcome. It's actually about actively performing, bringing that out. And I think that's what I would consider that peak performance, is actively drawing that out, whatever the final outcome, that you're constantly trying to bring that forward and share it with the world.
Okay. And do you think there are essential habits that people should cultivate to live at their peak?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of them we talked about today, right? So actively growing your outcomes. I know I keep repeating that, but I think that is something that is often not talked about. We think that we're either good at something, bad at something. This is what we've got, the cards we've dealt, anything. So actively, constantly looking for ways that you can grow and being involved in that growth process, not just positive thinking, not just praying and hoping, right? All of those things combined, but you need to get in and you need to do that work to make those things happen, right? And then setting up all of the pillars that you need to really make that possible. So things that we talked about, taking care of your health, pursuing and learning the things that you feel drawn to. You do have to take those steps, and then doing them consistently over time, in a way that continues to be engaged even when it can feel very boring. I think ultimately is a skill that we all have to cultivate, right?
Yeah. And what habits do you think people should avoid? Common habits that you see?
Common habits that I see are relying more on external, feedback and than necessary. I think there's this, we're social beings, so there's a natural tendency to, if you have something that you're feeling drawn to, you ask someone else, ask for advice. But anytime that you receive advice from someone, it's always coming through their own filter and their own lens on their own things that they've either struggled with or don't think are possible for them or are possible for them, right?
It's so true.
It's so true. And it's interesting, and it's because it's taken me, I think, this long to really even feel confident in saying that this is what I feel is most important, is that to trust yourself, and that ultimately you know best. You are the only one who has the full picture and the full context of not only all the inner workings, but also what's possible and how you can see what's possible, right? So I think listening to that, honoring your intuition, so that's opposite of what's the most challenging thing, which is don't weigh too much on advice you do or do not get, right? If you have a problem that you want to solve, something that you want to pursue, ultimately you will be the one who determines whether or not it's possible for you. I say that because at every step of my journey, whether it was opening the school, expanding the school, launching online, going into consulting, every single kind of pivotal step, there were many people who told me not to do it.
Yeah.
Right? So I always like to say, I'm like, it's taken this long to look back and being like, wait a minute, you shouldn't really listen. Ultimately, take advice as perspectives. People give you their perspective on what they think. Their advice is not what you should or should not do. That's their perspective on how this can work. Ultimately, you know what should come next.
Do you find sometimes that answers come to you when you're meditating?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, and in a big way, and things fall in place when I meditate. Again, in my spiritual practice, when I pray, like there are different things that come together, and not always understanding why. One of the books that I'm reading and starting, it's just a massive book. It'll take me a while to read, I think, is Irreducible Mind, which was shared with me from a few different people. but it's kind of understanding, like, where does consciousness come from? When we meditate, what are we connecting to, right? Like whatever it is, I don't understand it, right? But I can say that there are many answers that come to me, answers and next steps and ideas that come to me during meditation, to the point where I have to tell myself, like, not to stop my meditation because I want to write notes, right? But it's like,
Right.
yeah, like one of those things. So they always come, and when you're not
That happens
working
to
for
me
them.
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious, what made you decide, or do you remember the point that you decided that you wanted to do this podcast?
The podcast, I had been thinking about it for maybe the last year,
Great.
and
Yeah.
I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted it to be about, like whether it would just be health and wellness or whether it would be about business. But then I thought, like, in my opinion, to live your life at its peak, you have to have a little bit of everything. It has to be,
Yes.
you need some economic satisfaction, you need health and wellness, you need you need relationships, you need all kinds of things. So I thought the peak performance life kind of encapsulates everything, and I can speak with different guests that have experiences in different fields, and some of them, like you, have experiences in a bunch of them, and it can offer value to anybody that would be interested to watch.
I think it's a beautiful. I'm so glad that you pursued it, and I
Thank
think
you.
it's a beautiful kind of focus point that actually draws in so many diverse backgrounds. Have you read The Medici Effect?
No, not yet.
No, okay, but
Not
it
yet.
talks a
Yeah.
lot about kind of innovation, creativity. So much kind of thought growth comes from drawing in diverse backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
So, having different fields talking about, oh, here's how I did something, and here's how that applies here,
Yes.
and bringing that together brings out so much through the whole,
Yeah.
right?
I'm also learning so much through this process, speaking to
I
different
bet.
guests, because everyone has such valuable lessons, you know?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely.
I think it is really cool. Would you give us some book recommendations? Your top three, maybe?
Um, yes, The War of Art.
Yeah.
Let's start with that
Okay.
one. Pressfield. Have you read that? Have you read that one?
I read The Art of War, but not The War
Yeah.
of Art.
So not The Art of War. I'm actually not the
Yeah.
biggest fan of Art of War. I know it's a classic,
Yeah.
so no
Yeah.
offense to
Yeah.
anyone, but no, The War of Art is by Pressfield, and it's about
Right.
each of us have an internal resistance that will,
Yeah.
fear and doubt is inevitable, but ultimately it's that showing up and doing the work. But it's written by, he's a novelist, but he was also a copywriter. And it's just a gold mine of,
Okay.
for you doing this right now, any new creative endeavor, that's often the book that I give and gift to people. Okay.
Okay.
Another one I would say is Alchemy.
All right.
So it's the curious and dark art of, it's again by a copywriter, Rory Sutherland, about messaging, again, thinking, how you can challenge your own thinking.
Yeah.
Very big in that kind of area. And then I think the next one in this field, I would say let's go with Steal Like an Artist.
Okay.
Have you read that one?
I haven't. I haven't read any
Okay,
of these.
so Steal Like an Artist is one of those books where the perspective was such a shift. I think you'll like all of these then,
Yeah.
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 But the perspective is such a big shift, but the book is so light and engaging. There's visuals and things like that. But essentially,
Okay.
that there's nothing truly original, which of course is a concept and idea. Everything builds on what comes before, and your role is to selectively collect like an artist, and mash up what influences you. Right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's that you create your own unique, not by your own unique kind of message and who you are and how you contribute by selectively collecting from all of the humans around you. So I think, given what you've shared about this podcast, I think you
Yeah.
would really, really like that one,
I'm
actually.
definitely going to put that on
Yes.
my list. Well, thanks so
Yeah.
much. Well, um, we end every episode with a little quotation. I try to find some words that, for me, sum up or resonate with the guest that's on the show. So I found something that I think is quite short and sweet, actually. And it's something by William Arthur Ward. And it goes like this. The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires.
Oh,
And I
thank
think
you.
you are such an inspirational individual, and I'm so glad to have met you.
I'm
One
so
day
glad
in
to have met
person.
you one day in person, but I
Yeah.
appreciate your friendship and you and all that you do, and it's great to be a part of this. I'm very, very excited for all that you'll inspire
I'm
and
so
do with your
grateful that you
message.
came on.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here. So thank you again for asking me. Thank you for inviting
Thanks,
me, and I
Carmen.
look forward to learning from all of the different guests that you have
Yeah.
on your program.
I hope you
Yeah,
enjoy them.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Carmen.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Okay.
And that was it.
That was it. Yay.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
it.
How do
Yeah.
you feel?
I feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I thought it
great.
went so well. I
I
really
thought it went
enjoyed
so
it.
well too. I enjoy
Yeah.
your I say interview, but it just felt like conversation, which I think is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
I
really
think that's how
important,
it
right?
should be, right?
That's how it
Yeah.
should be, and that's not how it always is. So I really
And
appreciated
that's
that.
right.
It
Yes.
just felt like we were having coffee or something, right?
Yeah. Your tea must be cold now.
I drink cold tea all day long. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Well,
sometimes I have these and I have all the questions, but the conversation flows and I end up not getting to those points, but the conversation's so engaging, and I think that maybe translates better for the viewer.
I think so too. Yeah, and I think that's a
Yeah.
great way to do it because then if there's a dead pause, you can always check your sheet.
Yeah.
But then otherwise,
Yeah.
right? It's better you don't know where it's going to go or where
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to flow. Is there anything that you want to add or anything, or is that all
Well,
good?
I'd love for you to record something for us that we can add into the video
Okay, sounds
when
good.
we're editing. That
Sounds
would
good.
be, yeah,
I,
that'd be awesome.
I'll do that. I'll
And
get my piano tuned and actually practice because it's been a
yeah.
while since I've done both. It's been a
And
busy
then
couple weeks.
what would be the best, would the best link in the video description be your website if people want to?
Yeah, if you just did
Yeah.
carmenmorin.com, I've set that up so it branches to both sites.
Yeah,
That it'll keep people
because
on the
I'll do
piano
that.
site or yeah, and then it's pretty clear to navigate if they go to either if they're
Okay.
interested. What I might do because I always find it's a good way. So if you wanted to share a specific link, I've got both of my newsletters. So I've got two different newsletters. One is for the business clients and one is for music, but then they kind of have this
Okay.
overlap. So I can send you and you can decide. But any of
Yeah,
those
I think
is great.
well,
Yeah.
you can send both of the links. Do they click through and then they join the letter?
They can opt in for the newsletter. Yeah. So my newsletters, I've got the Music Mindset, which is where all the kind of piano people are for the most
Yeah.
part, which is like music, psychology, still a lot of more about learning than, and growth. But then my business newsletter is Principles of Practice. And that has
Okay.
lots of business
Yeah.
people and kind of that consulting field. So I can share both and
Let's put them both in because I don't know if I told you how I got involved with this venue, with this location.
no,
But so this place is called the Pencil Club, and we're in the library at the moment. But
lovely.
it's a members club in the city in Umhlanga, at least it's a suburb in Durban, and this is the most prestigious address in the city.
Wow.
So we're sitting at the highest point. So
Yeah.
and it's really beautiful and has
Yes.
a bunch of
Looks beautiful.
fantastic spaces. But I met the people here because um, the guys from the list competition in Utrecht got in touch with me and said one of their prize winners was going to be in Durban and could I arrange a concert for her? And I was a little bit
Amazing.
lazy. I was lazy. I didn't really want to go too far. And I thought, I don't really want to do this. Is there a piano close by?
Yeah.
So I reached out to the people at the Pencil Club and I said, this is what's happening. Would you be interested to host a concert? So they said, well, come through and
Amazing.
let's have a chat. And so I met with them and they said, we love this idea. Can you do more
Oh.
concerts? And I was like, yeah, I
Oh.
think I can.
Oh,
So they said,
brilliant.
okay,
Yes.
come on. And then just in passing, I said, well, I'm starting a podcast. They said, wait, we
Yeah.
want you to shoot it here. We'll sponsor it. And,
Oh,
it's like, so just
fantastic.
everything kind of happened. So,
Isn't that
and then
amazing?
I started this music appreciation society. So
I
we're going to have an
remember.
event
Yeah.
every month and
Oh,
jazz concerts and all kinds of stuff. So
beautiful.
hopefully if the
Jeez.
members end up watching this, they'll have kids or maybe even themselves who want to take lessons, they can hopefully join in.
Join.
And
Yeah.
this is, there are a lot of entrepreneurs and business people involved here with all the
Yeah.
affluent members. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping they would see this and find some value in what you have to offer.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. And you know what? And I appreciate you offering to share. I think that's just so great. That isn't it funny
Hmm.
that hindsight of like how things all just connect and click,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
And I was gonna say when you said you're feeling lazy, I'm like, so much brilliant innovation comes from people who are lazy. Like there's that quote of like you want the lazy employee or lazy
Yeah,
collaborator because they're gonna find like the most imaginative, efficient, like what's gonna work where I
yeah,
don't have to
yeah,
build a concert hall, right?
yeah,
Excuse me, but then the newsletters are perfect because then there's no pressure. Like they can
yeah,
they'll still get value, or they get the weekly kind of message, and then there's always options for programs, but then it's not like they
yeah.
have to join and sign up, but they can keep learning and kind
Yeah,
of
and I
getting
think
it.
if
Yeah.
they're on it and they keep getting the message, it may be the
Yeah.
third or the fourth one, the fifth one, they may decide, oh,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm gonna
That's
participate or
typically.
commit or do something. That's what
Yeah,
happens.
that's exactly
Yeah.
it. No. So,
All right. Well, thank you so
good.
much, Carmen. I'm so happy.
Yes. My
It was so nice to
pleasure.
chat to you.
It's so nice to chat with you too. Yeah, I was looking forward to it. So thanks. Thank you again for inviting me. I look forward to
Oh, you're
just listening to
welcome.
all of your guests. I'm sure they'll all be fantastic. So I'm
Yeah.
honored to be a part of it and in the early stages of it.
Thank you so
So,
much. Yeah.
yeah.
One thing with Riverside that we noticed the last time we did a recording is after we finish and we leave, please leave
Hmm.
the app open until it finishes uploading.
Oh, I remember
Yeah,
something about that. Okay.
because I did one other interview on Riverside and we didn't leave it open and it corrupted all the
Okay.
files and we have to
Oh
reshoot that interview.
no.
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely, yeah. That's always hard because okay, so then, but my app, it's not open. I don't have the app though. Or I guess I
Are
just
you
have
doing it
this
on the
window.
browser?
I'm just on the browser. Yeah.
It says
So,
you are 99% uploaded, so I guess just leave it
yeah.
open
Okay. So I'll
for
still I'll
for
still
5 or 10
click leave,
minutes.
but I'll just leave it
Yeah,
up there. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Leave it
I'm
open.
not going to touch anything then.
All right, cool.
And
What
then
will
you
you
can.
record for us? I'm curious.
I don't know. Maybe some of the Goyeska. I'm so
Yeah,
sporadic at some point, and even my piano is so out of tune. So I'm going to call him,
yeah.
and then I'll tune it, and then I'll yeah. I don't know. Maybe Granados. Because
Okay, awesome.
I'm loving it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Or Chopin. What do I have even up? Yeah, I'll find something. I'll send you a couple clips.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You can
You
decide.
choose.
Yeah,
Surprise
mix
us.
them up.
You
Okay,
you
sounds good.
surprise me. Yeah.
Sounds great.
All right.
Yeah, sounds
Thanks
good.
so much,
Okay,
Carmen.
my pleasure.
That's
And I will.
fantastic.
Fantastic chatting with you. And then I know this goes without saying, but when you have the episode live, I'll make sure to share it with my
Absolutely.
audience.
Yeah.
And yes, yeah. So that'll
I'm
get
gonna
out there.
post on Instagram either later today or tomorrow with one of your pictures, and
Okay,
I'll tag you as a collaborator so you accept
sounds
that and
great.
it'll share on your platforms. Should I use
Sounds
both
good.
your accounts?
I don't think you can if you're taking it as a collaborator. So go ahead and do it on the piano one,
Okay.
I think. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
again, similar, like my majority of my audience is in my database and email list anyways, right? So
Okay. Yeah.
as long as I have it when the episode's out, I'll send
Oh,
it out
you can send the
and
link
link it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
exactly.
Awesome. Oh,
Nice.
cool.
Okay.
All right.
Have a great,
Thanks,
is it
Carmen.
evening there? Are you off to
It's
bed
evening.
now? Is it late? Yes, okay. So
Oh, I'm gonna get something to eat, and then
yes. Okay, nice. All
yeah.
right.
All right.
Well, enjoy
Okay.
and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, thanks.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
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 Cheers.